we'll discuss today about relevance of sustainable design in contemporary context. So if we see the impact of human activity on any of these graphs given over here on this slide, so it is really astonishing to see all of these graphs are showing an exponential growth happening in them over the time. So for example, if we see the first one actually chart shows the progression of the population, how the population is increasing over the time in billions. So this actually data is taken from the year 1750 to 1800, 1850, 1900, 1950 and the year 2000. So there are at an interval of a 50 years it is being observed in the last 250 to 300 years, how it is taking place in the different domains of a human lives. So the second actually graph shows over here a total real GDP. So if you see it was almost the very close to the zero in the beginning year of a 1750, in the a 10 to the power 12 a dollar. So it was a very nil, very small, very smaller amount was there. But in the recent times, in the recent decades of the this year of 2000, it has reached almost a 35 billion trillion dollars. So this is a huge amount. Actually this is a huge amount, 10 to the power 12 if you see. And yeah, so how tall, how high it's going to go is really astonishing to understand. The next one comes a transport and the number of motor vehicles. So you can see there is a sudden actually jump observed in the year after 1900. So around at the year of a 1900 a 30, 40, okay, and 45, there is a huge actually jump which occurred, and now it's going exponentially high and high. So now there are over close to a 700 actually million number of transport motor vehicles were there in the year of year 2000. So that's a mind-boggling number actually, which were almost at the level of a nil, okay, and suddenly so much. Next is the water use. So how the consumption of water use has increased significantly over time. So from the decades from where this manufacturing and these processing and these things factory based actually output was actually proposed. So there was a huge requirement of actually resources, and water is one of the resource which is used for anything and almost everything. So for processing of any such materials, okay, water is always is an integral part, whether it is for the main chemical composition, or even for a supporting activities such as cleaning and stuff, okay, or for transferring effluents, or making it some medium. Okay, so water is mostly used for any and every kind of supported requirements in any manufacturing unit. So the consumption of water has increased tremendously, resulting into a scarcity of water at almost everywhere. So it's not the only the a domestic requirements, is the industrial requirement also of water which has increased significantly. So as you can see over here in this graph, this is from year 2000. So this is the stark actually, the rise, the steep actually angle which we can see itself is self-explanatory, how much of the consumption has suddenly begun. And the next one is the a fertilizer consumption. So how the fertilizers have become actually integral part of our a food production in the agricultural fields, because traditionally these food production used to happen over the a natural fertilizer, such as the cow dung and other a compost, okay, created from agricultural waste and vegetables, etc. But in the recent times, to give boost to the agricultural yield, okay, the use of the fertilizers has increased tremendously. And the next one comes the number of restaurants. For example, this McDonald's restaurants are taken into account over here, how these restaurants have come up so many in number in the just in a span of 50 years, okay, from a 1950 to year 2000. So that is also one of the very sharp actually curves what we can see over here. So this actually symbolizes the promotion of consumeristic actually lifestyle, the promotion of consumeristic actually food consumption, okay, it symbolizes actually the the success of the processed food industry, because earlier whatever was being consumed in the houses as like a food material was processed in the home itself. But now there is like a whole industrial like a processes are actually being devised to process food, and supply them in an like a bulk. So how this thing like having a burger in a like a restaurant and having like a simple chapati or rice meal at our house, okay, yeah, they actually both consume a tremendous amount of actually uh, energy. But the food items which are prepared at home, they consume very little amount of energy, what we saw in the like the table in the previous lecture in the food actually pyramid. So all of these food items which consume like a fat and which are like using like a processed like mechanisms, so they actually exert a lot of impact. So why this is that, this is the reason actually this graph is also given over there to remind us like how consumerism has actually succeeded in the recent actually times. If you let's see the other formula, the repercussions which are happening across the like a planet. So these graphs will show about like the first one over here is it says about like atmosphere is CO2 concentration. So the CO2 concentration in like a atmosphere, okay, has also significantly improved. Okay, so if we see like the concentration of CO2, so CO2 is one of the like a greenhouse gases. It absorbs heat, and these are the actually regions which are responsible for actually the global warming condition which is happening across the world. The next one talks about the NO2 N2O concentration. So N2O concentration, N2O is also one of the like a GHG gases. CH4 is also increasing over here. So if you see all of these gases like, and ozone depletion is also has happened in the like recent decades. Okay, so there is a the loss of like a very important critical gases such as like ozone, and there is a like a high concentration of not so friendly gases for the atmosphere, because the high concentration of them is going to result into a very like a severe condition which may increase like a earth's like a overall like a average temperature. The second last graph talks about like northern hemisphere average surface temperature has also started like to rise. So if you see like here the surface temperature of the earth in different places, it is observed like it's rising, as in like a if we plot a graph of like the annual temperatures, so now the tendency can be seen that it's rising. And the last one, it talks about the loss of tropical rainforest and woodland. Well, even if all of these were given for like a to be healed naturally using the like a biocapacity of this planet, but the loss of the lungs of this planet, okay, which are the forests and like a green cover, okay, if that is going to happen, then all of these bad effects are going to have like a multiple actually multiplied effect on this planet, because the corrective like a capacity of this the planet is also affected. If we see in this large last graph over here, it talks about the loss of like a rain forest covers and all that. So that has also happened actually significantly like a faster in the like a recent decades, in the like a next like a last like a 50 to 100 years. Okay, so there is a sharp actually decline which has happened. So how the now the question is, all of these like a the graphs of are the resultant of the like a human activities. As a summation, we can put this arrow which is always like tending up as an exponentially, can be represented at the like a human activities like a footprint on this planet earth, which is not so friendly, which is not so good. So the repercussions, like as we have seen in the like earlier slides, the repercussions can be like a really catastrophic and like a several fronts, whether it is like a the water related crisis, whether it is like a fresh air related crisis, whether it is the availability of land for habitation and occupation and professional activities, okay, or for like industrial use or for like agricultural use. So there will be a shortage of like all types of like resources. So let's see like a well, we have been seeing actually this impression like how the ecological footprint has actually gone beyond the actually world's biocapacity over the time. So this directly means like the humans as a like a collective like one single race, they have already like exhausted like the capacity of earth, and their like a present needs can only be fulfilled by have like a more than one earth, which is not practical, which is not possible. So as a resultant, well, there will be a little crunch and crisis of the resources and everything. Well, these are some like pictures which actually depict the state of affairs today. Okay, the rainforest, the conventional rail forest, which have been like this, like in this actually shape and form for like a millions of years, like Amazon rainforest, from the forest from northeastern states of India and several other places from across the world. They are coming to like an end like this. So a very high pace growth and development processes have actually taken over these lands, and these woods are actually being actually chopped off. These trees are being cutting down for like a consumption. So this is an illustration which gives some idea about the different the catastrophes this whole actually phenomena is exerting. Those are into emissions, destruction of ecological balance, exhaust. Okay, it's happening at the global level. There is a huge amount of like particulate matter which is being found in the air. Okay, these effluents are like very poisonous in nature. Okay, it's causing damages to the overall well-being of this ecology and ecological systems. Okay, and there are several species which are getting extinct as a resultant of such conditions which are prevailing across the corners of the earth. And there is a huge amount of trash and waste being generated, and it is really having some devastating effects. Okay, a lot of garbage collection. Okay, a lot of environmental pollution is happening. Okay, there is so much of a plastic as a waste material, and the plastic is entering into several unknown areas. Even plastic is being found these days in the bottom of the ocean floors, in the bottom of the rivers. Okay, and several hundred thousands and lakhs of animals and birds, they are actually getting affected. And the plastic is reaching in the food chain also in the form of microplastics. Okay, and the effluents which are being thrown into the air. So there is it's creating a phenomena of a smog, and cities are actually choking for the fresh air. Okay, and there is a lot of a death happening related with the climate change. Okay, a lot of imbalances in the flooding pattern, imbalances in the a fire pattern of the forests are actually catching fire nowadays more frequently. Okay, so these are actually some of the uh, glimpses which we actually can easily relate with the industrial industrialized age. And this is one of the very common sites in the close to the a human habitations, like towns and cities, even villages. These days there is a lot of a plastic based material which cannot be actually decomposed with the thermocol styrofoam based actually waste materials, which are simply accumulating, which are just simply washing ashore in the oceans and rivers, and they are actually disturbing the ecological balance of those the aquatic animals which are living in those areas. So how this can be actually taken care of? Okay, so there are some all of these are anthropogenic activities, the repercussions caused by a human activity on this planet, because that traditionally humans have used to live in the sync with the nature, and there was no actually man-made objects such as plastic and polymers which were not biodegradable. Even if humans were able to forge metals and other mineral based actually materials, but they were not so toxic in the nature. They were not forming a bulk of the waste which cannot be recycled. Okay, so metal was mostly always recyclable, and there are some several instances from the vernacular living styles that they have been using metals for the erecting structures or for the support of the structures. Okay, but there was no actually significant waste generated out of those vernacular designs. But in the recent times, okay, with the impression of this anthropogenic activities, there is so much of imbalance has being observed. For example, if you see over here in this a table, So it talks about like introduction of new species of like a cultivated plants. So humans have interfered even in the like a in the genes and the chromosomes of the like a plants and other biological like entities such as even animals. So there are like a several species of like a living beings and plants today which do not actually naturally exist in the nature. Okay, so they are the actually hybrids, they are the actually crossbreeds, they are the new breeds altogether, created by like a human beings for the consumption. So there are several plants, okay, which are derived from the like a lab, which have come out of the lab, okay, and they have become the part of the ecosystems. So how this nature is going to actually cope up with these kind of like a changes, because any species in the nature takes a very long time to get evolved or or even like a mutated. And nature actually, the all other species are surrounding that actually species, they actually move in the tandem, they move in the sync, and that actually species is able to cope up with the ecosystem for a longer time. But what will go wrong if like a some like a species is being introduced suddenly in the ecosystem, and how the nature is going to actually deal with that. And there is so much of waste and residue actually being generated these days, which is accumulating in the water, soil and air. Okay, various types of like construction activities are actually happening these days, a lot of like in the name of like a construction. Okay, there is so much of like a capturing and of like agricultural land, and the land which has been traditionally like a belong to the like a cattle, for the animals, birds, and just it used to lie like that to support the other like a different species and life forms. Now those types of lands are being taken over for the like a human habitation and human consumption. Okay, increasing the amount of food. So this is one of the like a traits also, where when the consumerism is increasing, it's leading towards the higher consumption rates of like resources, even like a simple thing such as food. Okay, different types of pollutants are actually coming out of like from nuclear to biological to chemical. There are several types of actually uh, toxins and several types of like pollutants which are coming in the ecosystem. Okay, genetic modifications are actually happening. So the several like agricultural crops and several like plants and fruits and vegetables, they are now actually tinkered with for their like a genetic like a structure. For example, like a small thing like a tomato. So how the tomato used to exist earlier, and the tomato what we buy in the like a supermarkets these days is altogether a different species. Okay, because it has been like a tinkered in its like a DNA and its like a genes to make it stay longer for like a human consumption. Okay, which can like doesn't go bad so easily, and all of these like mostly like the natural existing like vegetables, they used to go bad in a very smaller a span of time. So how such actually tinkerings and modifications are going to affect the nature is also is of like a major concern. And yeah, the obviously the most abusive like deforestations. So a forest are not just like a simple trees, they are the altogether a whole ecosystem in itself. Like they actually support several other life forms, they support several other like animals and species of like moths and insects and reptiles, you know even the species and different varieties of like a fungus and bacterias and things. So they all together actually create the ecosystem in the like a forests. Okay, and there are several actually benefits of like a forest which is being lost these days with the loss of the like a trees. And the last one, of course, the fire, like a such like a global like the activities of like a human like anthropogenic activities, they are leading towards like a the fires also, which are very catastrophic. Some regions of the world like California in the US, Australia, and several other portions, they have actually faced like such situations, the undesirable actually fire happening in those regions. So if you see what is the actually context of like a contemporary urban planning, like how this urban planning actually should take place. So there is one thought actually given over here: the pressure arising from the like a sustainability agenda, major changes in the structure and financing of like urban governments, opportunities and threats arising from the social and cultural transformations, demographic change and accumulation of social and environmental problems, contemporary change characterized by instability, disruption, rupture, conflict, and complex like adverse effects, Okay, competition between cities and urban regions at regional and national and global levels. So these are the actually things which have become a kind of a, context for the like a today's scenario, today's like a design scenario, today's like a planning scenario. So how to go about it is has become a major challenge actually. So scenes like this are becoming very common these days. You may have seen such like scenes from your like a village, if you remember how it used to be in your childhood, and now like how it has turned into in the recent like a years. And the agricultural fields which used to have like crops, okay, now there are like houses standing, now there are like roads constructed, now there is a lot of like a traffic movement. I remember seeing like millions of stars in the like a night time in my like a childhood my village. Okay, but nowadays the sky is filled with a lot of like a gas, smoke and light, and as a resultant we cannot see those twinkling stars anymore. So this is one of the very big actually examples and very evident examples which has happened in the last like a few years, okay, across like a different places. So now we have like a so much of like a abundance of like a light and dust and particles, okay, suspended in the air in the night time. So we see like this reddish yellowish like a brownish like a halo around the cities, and the cities are not clearer anymore for like a visual like a treat of the which the sky used to offer earlier. If you see here like how the average like countries are like these days like affected on the like parameters of like least toxic to the most toxic. So it is very self-explanatory over here. There are several countries which are in the dark like a maroonish color, okay, they are considered to be one of the most toxic actually countries and regions in the world, okay. And well, almost there are very few countries left which are in the least toxic actually area. So Brazil is one of them because of its like Amazon forests, okay. The at a fast pace rate they are also facing like a destruction, but yeah, fortunately till now it is still like having like the least toxic actually area. And some like a middle African countries are there, and some Southeast Asian countries are there in the like in the old Indian Ocean. And apart from these, almost every country has like a some scale or some amount of like a toxicity in general present in their like a natural elements such as like earth, water and air. So leading by, you can see the countries like Mongolia, and Saudi Arabia, and some more like African countries and Gulf countries. So those are one of the very highly toxic actually regions. And countries such as like China, Russia, and these have actually are also in the like highly toxic areas. So how the ecological impacts have actually taken shape and how it is affecting the people of those places is an like a interesting actually exercise to see. Some of like such visualizations you may have actually seen, okay, through like a National Geographic magazine and through like a different other like scientific like, explorers and enthusiasts who have actually observed like such phenomena happening in the different parts of the world. So these innocent birds, they do not actually distinguish between actually an organic matter and between a smaller like a uh, object like a plastic made, and they end up actually eating them. And obviously a huge amount of like accumulation of like a such like a smaller plastic parts has happened in their stomach, and as a resultant they have died. So this is really pathetic to see actually such extent of like the damage which is being caused by the plastic over the last several decades. So this is the shot actually taken from like a National Geographic, okay, which depicts this is a picture from like the Arctic to Antarctica. The ocean debris is killing marine wildlife, but we still have the power to stop the plastic pollution. So we must stop the uses of the plastic in our like daily lives. You see this shot, this is really uh, bad to actually witness such things. So you see in the stomach of this bird, so all of these like mostly these plastic parts we can relate. These are all parts of maybe a bottle, maybe a pen, maybe some screw, maybe a plastic like spoon, or maybe a plastic ring, maybe a plastic like a coil, maybe a plastic an elastic body or something like that. So such actually things have, which we generally like do not care, we just throw in the garbage, and they land up somewhere in the ecosystem, and they are being just simply like ingested by these innocent birds, which they cannot actually differentiate between what is eatable and what is not eatable. And this is the kind of end they are receiving as a resultant of like a, the plastic. If you see like this picture is a picture of a seal, okay, which is somehow unfortunately tied with some like a polymer based some rope or something, and its neck has completely like gone bad. So see like how bad this situation, by like a such like objects such as these plastic bags, and you see this crane is completely covered inside this like a plastic bag. So how it's going to fly? Obviously it cannot fly. Okay, so maybe it with the help of its beak, maybe it can feed for like some time, but soon it's going to end up, okay, somehow, and is standing on a like a piece of a, a tire. You guys, you can see there's all of this place. I think this picture was shot somewhere, I think close to the maybe a river or some water body or some place where there is a huge amount of polluting actually elements present. So overall, if you see of the pollution, so it's not just the animals, it's the humans, it's the all forms of like a species are actually getting affected because of this. So this is actually a table, this is a graph which talks about the air pollution in the city of like New Delhi, okay, over the like a period of like 1 year over different months. So you can see from the January 1, so the amount of like the air quality index, I think it shows over here is 2.5, okay, on an average. So here if you see this the scale of like it is almost reaching 475 or something, okay, on the 1st of January. This is a winter months, so January, February, and in the last if you see this is like October, November, and December again. So these actually 3-4 months the air movement actually remains like restricted, and due to the like accumulation of actually soot particles and other like particles suspended in the air, the air quality actually becomes critically bad, and the breathing in itself becomes a very difficult thing to do. And some sensitive patients such as like asthmatic patients and all, they feel actually really terrible actually in these months in such like cities. So it's not just the Delhi, it's not just the Beijing, there are several other like cities and towns are also experiencing such phenomena at a smaller scale. So how this thing is going to like take place in the like next century is a real point of concern, like how humanity, how the other living beings are going to survive in like such a like a bad toxic like a air quality actually place. Some of the examples of like a pollution in the water, and as a resultant you can see over here a number of fish have actually simply died because they cannot actually tolerate such amount of like a toxic actually content in the water, and they have actually become dead, and they have actually just they are floating in the river body. So this actually picture is taken from like a different places. You can see the first one is from Chandigarh, second from Ranchi, Pune, uh, Dhanushkodi in Tamil Nadu, then there's Kamni River in Karnataka, and Periyar River in Kerala. So this is a scene actually which is becoming like a frequent, okay, from all across the India, from several other countries also. So the how this like effluents which are coming out of like a factory and other manufacturing like a units is actually killing the ecosystem. Okay, so one actually such exercise was taken by this Aditya Birla group, and the sketches and illustrations what you're seeing here on this slide on the right side of Taj Mahal and a tiger, and this like a face mask and like a tree. So these are all made by actually the ink, the carbon extracted from the atmosphere. So this the ink used here is taken from the like air pollution. All actually ink is from taken from the pollution from the air. So such as this was actually done on the behest of like the United Nations. Okay, United Nations like a development program to create an awareness, and this is like some of the entries which was actually received from the like illustrators and artists. So this actually was done for like creating awareness. I think we must spread this awareness among all of our peers, friends and students to increase the attention towards like like how to deal with this environmental issues these days. Some of the more actually paintings I have referenced over here, which actually talk about these environmental concerns. So this is open for interpretation. This is, I think, artist logic, artist like visualization, like how he or she is visualizing the actually environmental situations these days. With this last slide, actually I would like to bring the attention of every one of you towards the causes of this environmental issues, which are depicted through these art actually works. These are the famous actually artworks from like a respective artist, but they have been modified to deliver the message of like environmental degradation. So from starry night it has become scary nights. Okay, the last one from like it's a famous painting from like Japan. So with the surf of this like a tsunami, it's carrying the garbage and the other waste material also, which are floating in the water these days. And of course the middle one, the famous Statue of Liberty from New York. Okay, so it's depicting the amount of like a pollution and the impact and the carbon emissions.